reduce recidivism rates. Okay, so what is maternal identity? Maternal identity was a concept that was theorized by Reva Rubin. Reva Rubin was a maternity nurse, and she developed this foundational work for what maternal identity is. So she dedicated her career to studying this transition. Basically, maternal identity is this transition from when a woman becomes a mother. She develops different cognitive operations as she's succumbing to this new role. And so it's separated into 3 different cognitive operations. First one is replication. That's basically where the mom is seeing her mom or other figures as role models, and she's role-playing as mother. So she'll pick up the behaviors, the attitudes towards motherhood, and she'll replicate them usually with either younger siblings, younger family members. Sometimes little girls use pets, dolls, and they'll role-play as mom. Second part is fantasy. This is where the mom imagines herself in the role of mother. She's introspectively looking towards the future, what she wants her kids to do, maybe sports, how she's going to interact with her children, and she's just basically thinking towards the future and how she, putting herself in events or how she'll act with her children, attitudes she'll work with motherhood. Third one is de-differentiation. In de-differentiation, the mother is seeing these attitudes, these traits, these behaviors that moms in her life already attribute, and she's de-differentiating between what she wants to include into motherhood and what she does not want to include into motherhood. So she's having this idea of what a mom is, and she's making it her own based on what traits, attitudes, beliefs she likes, and she's creating this own interpretation of what being a mother is. So what is the problem with the research question? My main research question is obviously, how does incarceration affect these women's maternal identity? And so obviously we know these mothers are separated, so one of the questions is how maybe age at separation, because these mothers are separated from their children at varying ages. Some of them very young, some of them very older when they separate from their children. Another question, does ethnic or racial background affect the mother's maternal identity and her enhancement and her needs in these different cognitive operations? And my last question was, how can these findings help programs that are already put into place to aid these women in their mother and child interactions and that maternal bond? What can this study find in order to enhance their cognitive needs and while they're incarcerated? So my participants, I had a total of 38 participants, where 42% identified as white, 13.2 identified as black, and 39.5 identified as Hispanic. The ages of my participants ranged from the youngest being 21 to the oldest being 56. The survey was conducted in 3 different facilities in Texas, in county jails, state prisons. So in a county jail, usually the participants were either awaiting their court date, awaiting transfer, and they're usually there for about a stay of less than a year. In a state jail, the moms are there for a maximum stay of 2 years, and they are not awaiting a court date, they're not awaiting transfer, so they have a sentence length of about 2 years maximum. In a state prison, the moms are also not awaiting their court date, they're also not awaiting transfer to another facility, and they have a stay of more than 2 years. Next slide. So the instruments that I used, it was a 1-page survey, front and back. And it was 2 scales, and the last part was a questionnaire. So the moms filled out a consent form, and then they filled out the survey at their leisure and then returned to me whenever they were done. And so the first 2 instruments that were part of the survey was the Myself as Mother Differential Semantic Scale, which was made by Walker, Crane, and Thompson in 1986. The original scale was used on parents that were stay-at-home, and there was usually 2 caregivers, and the mom was not the primary or the sole caregiver. Well, the mom was probably the primary caregiver, but she wasn't the sole caregiver. She had social support from her spouse. So it was adapted and it was changed because the population that I was working with obviously does not have the same, leisure and the same activities that the other moms studied in the original study. And so the first scale, which is the differential scale, it's a self-evaluation scale. The original one consisted of 11 bipolar adjective pairs embedded within a 22-item, 7-point semantic differential scale. The scale that was used in our study had 16 bipolar adjective pairs, 32 items, and an 8-point scale. The mothers would then rate themselves from 1 to 8 as they identified closer to each word that the pairs were given to. The higher score was indicative of positive maternal self-evaluation. The areas covered in maternal functioning in the first scale, which is the differential semantic scale, was psychological well-being, management, and mother-child interaction. The second one is the gratification checklist that was made in 1974. It's a 13 item, 5-point scale to which extent the statement has been true. So the mom would read the statement and then she would choose on a scale to 1 to 5 as to how the statement rang true. So 1 being not at all, to 5 very much. So it changed to fit the population again because the original study used stay-at-home mothers. So the difference is this one measures social support, whereas the first one up here measures management. So they still both measure psychological well-being and mother-child interaction. However, the first one measures management as well, and the second one measures social support. The last part is the demographics questionnaire. The demographics questionnaire basically answers marital status, offense, their sentence length, and just other demographic questions. So the next slide. These are some example statements from the gratification checklist. That's the second part of the survey. So some of these you can read them. I'm not obviously going to read them all, but they involve like a deeper connection with your partner. So since the birth of your child, have you developed a deeper connection with your partner? And they would answer 1, not at all, to 5, very much, and so on and so forth for the rest of the questions. So these were some of the significant results that we've seen. So the first result that was very interesting and significant to our study was that Black mothers yielded higher scores in psychological well-being and social support compared to Hispanic and white mothers. And so specifically the data showed a statistically significant difference with a p-value of 0.051 for social support and a p-value of 0.048 for psychological well-being. And the second finding that we found was the results revealed a weak positive correlation between age of separation and cognitive operations related to well-being and management. So although there was a correlation and that was positive, it was weak. The offense type, we studied that with using ANOVA. So that first one was also done with an ANOVA test. That's an analysis of variance test. The second one was a Pearson's correlation. This one was also done with an ANOVA test. And we wanted to see if offense type directly affected mother-child interaction or the cognitive operations. And so there was no significant results with p-values that were greater than 0.05 for all 3 cognitive operations across the different offense types. Okay, moving on to my discussion. When it comes to race and ethnicity, the question was, do mothers of different racial and ethnic backgrounds differ in their need for cognitive enhancement of these different cognitive operations? And so we found that Black mothers yielded a higher score in psychological well-being and social support. And based on the literature, this does make sense because kinship is higher in Black and Latinx communities. Social support from friends, family, romantic partners is really prevalent in these communities. There's the development of a strong identity within these communities because it's tied in with culture. So culture and identity are tied together, which yields higher scores in social support and bonding and that passing down of culture, morals, their Afrocentric values. Race socialization has been found to have a significant positive well-being in these communities. When it comes to age of separation, mothers basically experience the grief and pain exactly as a mother who would have lost her child or maybe deals with the separation from divorce. It's a phenomenon called filial deprivation. It's characterized by feelings of remoteness, helplessness, anger, guilt. And so my question was, maybe age of separation affects these mothers in that the older they are, when they're separated from their child, maybe they manage these cognitive operations better than younger mothers do. However, the research shows that they don't. They all deal with it the same way, and even though their older moms seem to handle separation better, because it was a positive correlation, it was a weak positive correlation, so that's important to emphasize, that age of separation does not matter. The the effects remain the same between all mothers. Okay, so my last question was, does offense affect the cognitive operations and the enhancement for these needs of cognitive operations? The literature shows that mothers are already scrutinized on a day-to-day basis. They're being judged heavily by society. But mothers who are incarcerated for a drug offense get scrutinized even harsher than everyone around them because they're there for a drug offense. It's because of the behaviors that are associated with the drug offense. And this type of offense are negative behaviors, and so this social stigma is in the literature shown to affect these women even more. So it would be theorized that their maternal identity would probably be lower. But there was no notable difference in the participants' responses between the groups with different offenses. And I think it was important because it just kind of defies the literature. It shows that even though they are incarcerated for a certain offense, it doesn't affect their maternal need for any of the enhancement of any of these cognitive operations. So moving forward, I think there's so much research that needs to be done within this population. Even though it is a vulnerable population in research, I think it's still women who need help and support. And so I think there's someone who needs a lot of aid. And so I think research can help them in that form. There's already programs in place to help mother and child and children increase that bond and increase maternal identity, but I think there's still these facets that can be included into these programs to further aid these moms and aid even the children. So I think what's really important, especially for moms as they're separated from their children, is to still have that decision-making role, and that's called parental capital. It's basically having that authority without being questioned about it. It's just your mom and there's no questions asked, that's why she has authority over me. So I think it's still important to implement that within these mothers because they're separated. So usually they'll have a caregiver, grandma or whoever the children stays with makes all their decisions. And so I think incorporating mom either in mom, let's make a grocery list together, or making recipes with her children, or helping their kids with their homework. It's still showing mom as a parental role, still showing mom as authority. So I think going that way with these programs is very, very important, and just including mom in their household. That way, when the mother is released and she is with her children once again, she is still seen as a role of authority, and she's still seen as someone to come up to. Because that, when she's separated and then when she's re-released, a lot of the children a lot of times won't recognize mom as mom. You're someone who's been away for so long, why do I have to listen to you? Or they're just met with a lot of confrontation. So I think it's important to stabilize this role and maintain that bond while incarcerated. These are my acknowledgements. I want to thank the Premier Scholars Program for all the help, and being able to do this research is only through them. I want to thank the wonderful Dr. Lisa Holler, who's right there. Thank you so much for putting up with me and just helping me throughout my research and every question, unconditionally just helping me and guiding me. Dr. Molly Minus, thank you so much for your guidance as well, and for all your advice when I was dealing with any research problem as well. Dora Perez, thank you so much, kept me on my toes, and you always help me. I want to thank my 2023-2024 McNair cohort for always supporting me and just making me laugh whenever I was so stressed about this research. St. Edward's University, of course, and my parents. I would like to thank you guys also for just being my little support system. Thank you.